You know, not every booker's perfect. Doesn't happen. People make mistakes. Bookers make mistakes. Last year, New Japan. Well, I guess 2 years ago. But leading up to last year's Wrestle Kingdom for New Japan, you had Naito, who won the G1, and everyone kind of understood why he won the G1. And then some people were like, he just doesn't seem like the right guy, because the thing with New Japan is they have 3 guys in Okada, Tanahashi, Nakamura that can headline any pay-per-view. They have 2 titles in their IWGP World title and the Intercontinental title that can headline any pay-per-view. Those titles are important. Those titles are a big deal. Both of them. And they're always looking for that 4th guy. And the fans, if you listen to them, if you listen to the fans that follow New Japan in the US, they have the guy that they think should be the 4th guy. Fans in Japan apparently have the guy that they think is the same guy, and it's Shibata. And due to just arrogance, I think, he's not the 4th guy. And so they try to find other people to be the 4th guy, and Naito was that guy. And by the time they got to Wrestle Kingdom, he did not main event the show. The Intercontinental match between Tanahashi and Nakamura main evented the show. The show did fine. It wasn't that big of a deal, ultimately, but it was very clear that Naito just wasn't the guy, or that he wasn't the guy yet. Very good wrestler, but just didn't have that thing. And then you keep going. Just for an example, you know, last year, New Japan, in an attempt, in my opinion, to kind of save guys so that they didn't have guys hurt and burn out and all this stuff. They were trying to do some different things. So the time they got to G1, they could have this mega masterful, awesome tournament thing that G1 was this year, and even this last year. And so they brought in the Gracies, and it sucked, and it wasn't very good, and it was all this. I got why they did it, but it doesn't mean I thought it was good. So, but still, both Jado and Jado both won Bookers of the Year in the Observer Awards. And pretty much New Japan cleaned up this year in the Observer Awards. And a lot of people, oh, it's because, you know, Dave Meltzer and you know, people that watch that, you know, they're going to vote that way anyways. Yet, if you go back and look, WWE always has an advantage in that stuff, in those awards, because they're the biggest, baddest promotion there is. They are. They have the most money. They're the biggest promotion, all of that stuff. And outside of UFC. So they always, you know, always do well. If you have people who are good, they usually do better than maybe they should. And that's fine, because it's WWE and people know they're doing it. So, that being said, like I said, you know, New Japan is super hot right now. And one of the reasons is because they've got 3 guys, like I said, that can main event any of their major shows. With anybody. Except maybe the Tokyo Dome. That would be the one that would be different. But other than that show, they can main event pretty much any show. On top of that, they have a bunch of guys underneath those guys. A bunch of guys. Not just like 1 or 2, 3 or 4. Like, try about 10. That they can go, okay, we need you to main event. So we're going to spend the next month, 2 months, hyping you up, building you up a little bit, just enough to where you look strong enough to take on and be in the main event. You see that with in New Beginnings. The second New Beginnings, the first pay-per-view is going to be split into 2 shows. The second show will be Nakamura versus Eugene Nagata. Nagata wasn't even on the Wrestle Kingdom pay-per-view itself. He was on the pre-show, which you can only see if you had the New Japan Network. And we'll get to the New Japan Network, by the way. We'll get to that. And he won basically their version of the Royal match, which wasn't very good. And then they basically, on the next show said, you know what, I want to take you on. I want to be in a great match like you were with Ibushi. And that was it. That's all it took. That's all it took. And he's now main eventing one of the pay-per-views. That's all it was. So, yeah. Watch the Royal Rumble. And, wow. It's a microcosm. It's a show, and it shows everything wrong with WWE. It shows everything wrong with WWE probably in the last 10 years. All freaking together. From start, finish, from the pre-show on. You look at Cesaro, who without a question is probably, you know, I remember when he was in Ring of Honor, and, you know, I always said him and Nigel McGuinness, they were the guys. They were the guys that I could not believe WWE had not signed. Because Cesaro has to look. He's fairly okay on the mic. He's awesome in the ring. He just seems like a guy that, you know, WWE, maybe not a main eventer, but could be an upper mid-card guy. And I guess in a way, he is an upper mid-card guy in this, but the thing is that it should be, you know, your upper guys, maybe your kind of next upper guys, then you got your upper mid-card guys, and he should be here. How it is now is you have John Cena, the guys John Cena feuds with, and then somewhere way down here, where you guys can't see, are the upper mid-card guys. That's the problem. So you have a guy like Cesaro, who should be up, who's not. Okay? Even better example of that would be Wade Barrett. Wade Barrett, and I've talked about this time and time again, and I know people get tired of me saying this, but it's true. Remember when NXT started back on the Sci-Fi Channel? And, you know, we all knew Daniel Bryan probably wasn't winning. We got that. We understood it. He was against everything. But we also knew that as long as he, you know, went out there, got over, he'd be fine. We all knew that. We got it. We knew it. That another guy probably needed to win. We knew it. Most of us saw Wade Barrett and said, that's the guy they want to win. That's the guy that should win. Most of us saw it. He didn't have it in the ring yet, but he showed up. He was good on the mic. He had that presence that very few guys have anymore. He just had it. And I don't care what era. You can go back forever. He's got the body. He's got the look. He's got the mic. He would have been a star in any era. And these fuckers can't get this guy over. You know, people can go, well, it's because he gets hurt. They can't get the guy over. I mean, he's the Intercontinental Champion, what, something, and that would mean something if that title meant anything. It means nothing. It's like a curse. It's like, ooh, here's the title. Now we're going to job you out like a mofo. That's what they do. And it's ridiculous. But you have Cesaro, who you would think, okay, he should, you know, he should be up there. You have Tyson Kidd, who, you know, it took, you know, probably the only thing positive to come out of Total Divas is the fact that somehow Tyson Kidd got a personality, and that now people can actually kind of see him being him, and he can kind of be snarky and all this stuff, and it works, and he's good in the ring. And I'm not saying he should be an upper mid-card guy, but he could definitely be a guy, and he's just a guy. And so, and then you got the New Day. And when the New Day started, the rumor was they were going to be this militant black group. Then Ferguson happened, and then everything after Ferguson happened. And I get, you want to, you want to be careful. Fuck that. Fuck it. You know what? Be relevant. Have an angle that is relevant to today. And say, you know what? We'll have a militant black group. They're going to say stuff that maybe pisses people off. Zeb Coulter and Zack Ryder. I almost said Zack Ryder. Jack Swagger worked because it was a relevant angle. You know, yes, they were racist idiots, but it was a relevant angle. And it was kind of like, oh, look, it's a bit relevant. Now, imagine if you did that with, you know, a militant black group, and you took it a little, you know, little bit farther than it needed to be, so you knew that they were going to be heels, but you made them make relevant points and the whole bit, and you actually be relevant, and you have a relevant storyline. Imagine that. You might actually get these guys over, particularly, you know, a guy like Kofi Kingston, who everyone likes, but has never really been over. You know, it's It's amazing to me. Or Big E. There's a guy that you would think that would be all over. Athletic, big, strong, crazy. Yeah, there we go. And yeah, for whatever reason. There we go. So you have that. You have a tag match with the Usos versus MIZDOW, which will be fine, except for the fact that we've seen the match 8 billion times. Why have we seen the match 1 billion times? Because these fuckers are lazy. When it comes to booking, they're lazy as fucks. You start watching New Japan World. You start watching the New Japan C shows, and you start which is usually where they take a lot of the TV from leading up to the pay-per-views, and you start seeing what New Japan does. You're like, why doesn't WWE do this? Because they have all this time to fill. That's what we keep hearing. They have all this time to fill. Okay, why can't we get 6-man tag team matches with guys that don't normally do tag team matches? Your single matches can be, single matches with guys that normally do tag team matches. Maybe you have some singles matches with guys who maybe are singles guys but don't, but one guy's on his way up and one guy's on his way down, something like that, leading up to the pay-per-views, so that when you get to the pay-per-view, you haven't seen the match that you're going to see on the pay-per-view 8 billion times already. You actually are like, ooh, I'm excited to see this match. I'm finally going to see this match. And you can do that by, you can have the Usos versus MIZDOW with 2 other guys, and it works. And you can do all of that, and you can switch guys around, and you can make the matches exciting. And you can give people, eventually, is it going to get like New Japan does, where it's like, it's just a 6-man. I would much rather be, it's just a 6-man than, it's another, Usos and MIZDOW match. I'd much rather have that. That way, when you have the pay-per-view, you actually have a match that people want to see. I understand that the network fucks the pay-per-view all up. We'll get to the network. We'll get to the network. But again, why is that so hard? Why is that so difficult? Well, you don't have Nitro anymore. You can take the time to re-educate people. If you're gonna fucking do a 6-minute or a 5-minute match, anyways, why not just bring out a guy and have a guy squash a dude and then do a quick promo? What's wrong with doing that? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And you have enough guys on this roster that you can have squash guys, and you should be doing that. And they don't do it, and I don't get it. But anyways, there we go there. Then you have the Divas match. And Divas match would have probably been okay if it was, they gave it a lot of time, and so it died a death because you've trained these people that it's a Divas match and that you shouldn't give 2 shits about it. And again, if you want to have women wrestle, okay, that's a great and wonderful thing. But you have to give them the ability to succeed, and all they've given them is the opportunity to fail, because you either push women who can't wrestle and then you have to only do like 5-minute matches, or you have women who can wrestle but you don't give them long enough to where they can actually get over in the ring, and so people are like, who cares? Holy Christ, really? Yeah, a main event. And a main event was awesome. A main event that probably should have ended the show, because it was that fucking awesome. And what did we get? We got an awesome main event. And you had, remember when the Shield started, and everyone was kind of looking at the Shield, and everyone already knew, because it had come out, that Roman Reigns was, he was the chosen one, and they were putting him in there so that he could develop more and do all this stuff. And we watched him develop, and we watched him come along. And then we had Dean Ambrose, and we had Seth Rollins, and everyone figured, and me included, and I was the guy that was not a big Dean Ambrose fan when he was on the Indies. I said that. But when he got signed, I also said, this guy will make it big in the WWE because he has all of the stuff that will make him big in the WWE. I just didn't like him in the Indies. And that Seth Rollins would be the odd guy out. Pretty much everybody said that, because it was like, he's really good in the ring, but is he going to be able to overcome the mic stuff? Is he going to, all of this stuff? And my God, we were so fucking wrong on all of it. Roman Reigns isn't a bad guy. And I like Roman Reigns. I think a lot of people actually like him. I think he was just put in a spot to fail. And that sucks. It sucks for him. It does. But you have Seth Rollins. And we all, anyone that followed Seth Rollins back when he was in Ring of Honor knows what Seth Rollins can do if you give him a chance. And they gave him a chance. And he showed what he could do. And he made the most of it. And then you have Brock Lesnar. And Brock Lesnar is Brock Lesnar. And they let Brock Lesnar be Brock Lesnar. And the only issue I have with this is that when they first brought him in, here they bring in the #1 pay-per-view, well, I guess #2 pay-per-view draw. Right? He'd be #2. Or Pacquiao. Okay. One of the top pay-per-view draws, without question. The top pay-per-view draw in UFC. Okay. Only Pacquiao and Mayweather would be bigger draws than him. Come in. Here he is. And what do? You have him lose. Then what do? You put him in a thing with Triple H, and eventually he beats Triple H, but then you eventually have him lose to Triple H anyways. And then luckily you have the CM Punk feud, which helped. And then you have him beat Undertaker, which probably would have meant more to people if he hadn't lost all that other time. And you had used him right, and you used him as this monster, and you had done all this great stuff with him. And then, yes, then it would have been greatness. But you let him go out there, and even though they have booked him absolutely horrible, and my friend Marquine, Timer Baller 1, he's kept saying, what has this guy done? He's done nothing, all this stuff. Even that's why, because they've used him for shit. They really have. They have not used him to his full capacity, and then they get pissy that, well, if he's not worth the money. Well, the reason why he's not worth the money is because you idiots didn't book him for shit. And then you let him do his thing. And then you have John Cena. And I've never been one of those people that have said, I've come on here and I've defended John Cena. I have no problem with John Cena with the spot. I have no problem with any of that. I have a complete problem with the way WWE uses him. I have a complete issue with the fact that there are times when they could have sacrificed John Cena to make a guy. Because really, when was the last real guy made? And honestly, we've had John Cena and Randy Orton. One of the reasons why people are so sick of that fucking feud is because that was pretty much it. Wouldn't push Matt Hardy. Maybe they shouldn't have. Wouldn't push Jeff Hardy. Maybe they shouldn't have. Wouldn't push MVP when people got behind MVP. Maybe they should have. You had CM Punk, but it took CM Punk basically pulling a Daniel Bryan to be able to do that. Let's see. Who else is a guy that they basically just, failed? All these guys, I'm sure I'm forgetting dudes that they just failed on because they don't know how to make stars. And they refuse to make stars. And they refuse to say, you know what? We have to sacrifice John Cena a little bit so that John Cena can help make dudes. That's what you do. That's how you make dudes. You make guys look good. You make guys look like they're worthy to being in the ring with John Cena. You don't have John Cena in these, unbelievable odd spots. I understand it makes for a good storytelling every once in a while, but they do it so often. And then they wonder why the fans don't like John Cena. And then they don't get why when you push John Cena down people's throats so much that when you try to do the same thing with Roman Reigns, the fans are like, fuck you. Wouldn't matter if it was Roman Reigns. Wouldn't matter if it was the second coming of Hulk Hogan. People would have been like, fuck you. We ain't doing this. We don't want someone pushed down. We want the guys that we chose. If we chose the guy you want to push down our throats, fine. But if we didn't, then this isn't going to happen. And because of that, because of John Cena, I think truly is one of the big reasons why what happened at the Royal Rumble. Then they had this match, and it was a beautiful match. If it wasn't for Wrestle Kingdom, this probably would be, early match of the year contender. But we had Wrestle Kingdom, so it doesn't happen. But this was awesome. This was an awesome WWE main event style match in which all three guys looked good. All three guys came out of it looking just fine. All three, Seth Rollins took the pin, and I've said this before. Guys can lose. Guys can lose. It doesn't matter if they lose. It matters did they have a performance that made them a star. Guess what? Seth Rollins got made into a star because of that performance. I guarantee you, people are going to want to see more Seth Rollins matches because of that performance. Brock Lesnar looked like a fucking beast. Looked like a fucking beast. John Cena didn't come out of this match looking any worse anywhere. It all went fine. Then we got to the Royal Rumble. The Royal Rumble. The thing about the Royal Rumble was that this was that it really showed how weak the roster is. It's just like I said, you have John Cena, you have some guys that John Cena feuds with, and they're like down here. Then you got some other dudes, and then you got everybody else, which is kind of off the screen. And because of that, you had maybe 2 guys who could win this Rumble. You couldn't even bring in Randy Orton, so maybe you have 3 guys that you could say, okay, well, here's the 3rd guy that could win the Royal Rumble. You had 2. And you start off your show, and you start off with The Miz, who gives a shit, and R-Truth, again, who gives a shit, because really, the Royal Rumble comes down to 2 things. You either have a bunch of stars that people are like, oh, who's coming next, who's coming next, who's coming next, and it became very evident. It was like, who cares who's coming next? Or the guys in the ring are, you're keeping it to a minimum of like 4 or 5 guys in the ring at a time, and the 4 or 5 guys in the ring at a time are having a really good match with each other, within the confines of the Royal Rumble. We got neither of that this year, and because of that, this match just felt horrible. On top of that, we have the Daniel Bryan thing. Daniel Bryan comes out, Daniel Bryan gets eliminated. The fans were kind of like, and then the fans were like, he got eliminated. And then they said, well, fuck you. And they took over the show. And I understand WWE will probably be like, oh, well, it's Philly. It's, one of those bizarro world cities. This is my thing with that. The bizarro world cities, with maybe Chicago being the big notable exception. Those northeast cities that are bizarro world cities, guess what? If the shit really hit the fan and the WWE had to kind of scale back and go back and kind of go, okay, we got to kind of watch what we're doing, and we're going to scale back. Those are your core cities. And if your core cities are shitting on your product, there's a problem. People will say, well, people pay. And my thing with the, it's just kind of like WrestleMania. People go, well, WrestleMania's already sold out for the most part. Here's my issue with that. Yeah, because you had a bunch of scalpers that bought the tickets. But if you don't put on a WrestleMania, the people are going to want to buy those tickets from the scalpers. You can sell all those tickets you want, but there ain't going to be anyone there to buy merchandise, and they're going to have empty seats, and people are going to be like, well, you're saying it's sold out, but I see all these sections that are empty. It's something to keep in mind, because that's important. It's important to the spectacle that is WrestleMania. But anyways, so that happened. And then you really didn't have anyone else that, the fans gave a shit about. The guys that the fans did give a shit about, WWE didn't give a shit about. Then you come out to the end, and it was basically Roman Reigns taking on the 2 giants and overcoming the odds and beating the 2 giants, which the fans were like, this is bullshit. They were chanting for Rusev, which makes me truly wonder if at WrestleMania they do John Cena versus Rusev. What will the fan reaction be? Will Rusev actually get, some cheers? Because arguably, because you don't have the Wyatts, which, you broke up the Wyatts, even though they were probably one of the best acts in all of pro wrestling. You broke them up, and they were starting to fall under a little bit. Well, they're like a bunch of who cares guys now. They need to be put back together. Because it was a great act. Now you've got probably the best act now in Lana and Rusev. Will they get cheered over John Cena? That will be very odd depending on how they're setting it up. And it's very, very, this could be like an old school USA, type match where that won't happen. But I'm just saying. And so that's what you're left with. You're left with just this wackiness at the end. The fans didn't care. Rusev came in, and that was even like, why was he, it wasn't even drawn out. It was just like, do, and a finish. And then Big Show and Kane start beating up Roman Reigns again. Reigns is getting, beat up, and then The Rock comes out, and not even The Rock. Who got cheered at first. People were like, ah! And then he started saving Roman Reigns, and everyone was like, whoa. What does it say when The Rock is getting booed? Okay. What's it going to say? So there you go. And then on top of all that, on Twitter, you had for most of the night, and I think it's still, I think it's, for most of the night, it's been either at the top or the #1 trending, which was cancel WWE Network. And I will agree with that, but if you're going to cancel the WWE Network, you need to screenshot that shit, and then what you need to do is you need to show yourself spending that $9.99 on some other wrestling product. Got to do that. I'm not going to do that because to me, that $9.99, I'm now going to call not my network subscription, my NXT tax. That's WWE taxing me for enjoying NXT. That's what I'm going to call that. Is my NXT tax. That's it. You know, you had that go down. You had people legitimately. I mean, the network. Apparently, if you tried to cancel your subscription, the page was either very slow or crashed. New Japan World crashed. Could be coincidence. Who knows? But yeah, you had that trending. That's not good for WWE. Not good at all. And I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know. Can they do Daniel Bryan again? Apparently, they don't want to do Daniel Bryan again because they feel like they've already gone to that well once, and they don't want to do it again. And even though Daniel Bryan apparently has nothing for WrestleMania, and your WrestleMania card looks like it's Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, which that's going to be very odd, given that if Brock is leaving, he's probably going to be the one being cheered, and Roman Reigns is going to be the one getting booed, and it's going to be like, what? That's just going to be a wacky dynamic. Triple H versus Sting, which every casual fan I know, and since I've moved to Oklahoma City, I've met much more casual fans than I knew when I was in Texas. I've met a lot of people who only pay-per-views they watch are the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania. And leading up to the Royal Rumble, people were asking me because they heard Sting came back, and so they were all like, "Oh, it's going to be Sting versus Undertaker, right?" And I said, "No, it's going to be Sting versus Triple H." And they were like, "Oh, okay." Kind of like, really? That's what we're going to get? So I can't see a lot of casual fans getting excited about that. Maybe they can turn it to good to the casual fans that watch the show often. Yes, maybe they can turn them into it. But to the fans that aren't, that just watch, order WrestleMania because they always order WrestleMania, not so much. What else did we get? So we've got that. Looks like we're going to have Rusev versus John Cena. Again, another match that might have a weird dynamic because of the crowd. I would imagine we will get Seth Rollins versus Randy Orton. I think that will be a great, awesome match because I think they are tailor-made for each other. I think that the stuff that people don't like about Randy Orton are the very things you want a guy to do in a Seth Rollins match. And I think that they'll just... And also, I think you might see stuff out of Randy Orton you don't normally see with a guy like Seth Rollins, because if you ever notice, when Randy Orton's in there with a guy who can really go, all of a sudden he starts, like, he ups his game. It's very... He always wrestles to the level of the guy he's wrestling with. And so there is that. And then what else? I don't know. Are they going to do something with Rock? Are we going to get an Undertaker match? But this show isn't doing it for me. And I think WWE really needs... I think that was the other thing. I think that's the thing that people aren't really talking about, is that the show itself isn't really... the WrestleMania card doesn't sound all that great. And that's one of the main issues. But, yeah, so, this isn't even really a review. It's more of just a really, really type shit. But, anyways, I'm out. Have a good one. Later.